let's bring on our guest for the day. I hyped it up last week on stream. It's going to be a great time to have him to chat with us here. You all know him as one half of Violence is Forever, former DPW Tag Team Champions, current GCW Tag Team Champions. He's a champion right now in BLP, Black Label Pro. One of our favorites to chat to. It's been a while since I spoke to him. Folks, friends, everybody, Kevin Koo is live on the stream with us. Kevin, hello, thank you for joining us today. Who is your friend that you've got on stream with us here?
Hi, this is Zappa. AI can't find him though. Say hi, bud. Hi, bud. Okay, you can go away now. Have fun.
Everyone in chat going crazy for your dog. We love animals up here on stream. How you doing today, man? Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me. It's cool.
Obviously we have you on because you're going to be preparing for a very special match soon. We're going to be talking about that in just a little while. But 2024 has sort of been a year of dream matches for you, if I do say so myself. I want to start off by talking about one of them from earlier in the year. You and Dom, as Violence is Forever, you finally got the chance to wrestle the Astronauts 2-on-2. You'd previously wrestled Abe with Irie instead. Tell us a little bit about that experience, finally getting to wrestle the Astronauts 2-on-2.
It was pretty awesome. Like, as most times it happens, our travel is really hit or miss. So, like, unfortunately, travel that day was pretty bad. So, like, I got there late-ish. But, like, we always say that pro wrestling is a universal language. So, like, having worked with Abe before and Nomura's English isn't good whatsoever. It was a lot easier to understand each other than I expected it to be. I went in with like obviously very high expectations and of like myself, Dom, and just like of the match because it got so hyped for such a long time that I didn't want to disappoint or fail anyone or myself. So I put a lot of pressure on that specific time.
Yeah, what is that experience like when you know that when something is being branded as a dream match? Like, how does one go about like meeting that expectation?
It's so much harder to live up to the expectation of a dream match than just a match that you really enjoy, right? Like I wrestle my friends quite often. I'm like, oh, this is super fun. I can chill. I can just like worry about having like my good match. But then like if it's a dream match, I feel like more people are going to be watching it under like more scrutinized eyes. So I have to like be on every single thing. And if I like mess anything up, I'm like, well, that went to shit. When realistically in the grand scheme of things, it really didn't matter. But it's like it puts a lot of pressure on yourself. And I can't speak for Dom or anyone else that has those types of matches, but like I put a lot of pressure on myself when it comes to performing because I just I want to be the best that I can and I want to show that I can have that at all times. Like I never want to be off.
Was there also some consideration to like, because it was their first time as a team in the States? Like, how does one
Mhm.
go about like sort of, are you also sort of like introducing the astronauts to like an American audience? Or did you guys sort of go in thinking like, oh, anybody who's watching this already knows who these guys are? Like, what's the mindset when working that kind of situation?
I always go into matches like no one has ever seen me before or me and Dom before. Like it's a completely new introduction every single time because you can't rely on people watching everything. Like there's so many different wrestling promotions that go on at the exact same time that are just localized. Like those fans are just there. That's all they watch and that's all they care about. Like so many DPW shows or anything like that, fans just come to those shows. A lot of them don't give a fuck about WWE, AEW, anything outside of just that scope right there. And it's the craziest thing ever. So like I feel like people who don't cater to the crowd that's there are missing out on so much of the match in general. Like, yeah, it's great to want to have to play like to the broader internet audience, whatever, and like it feels really good when someone's like, "Oh, hey, great match! I saw it on stream, whatever." But it's like if it doesn't come across live, then like it's kind of a wet fart.
Um, Speaking of fascinating dream matches that you've had this year, last week you were wrestling Miyu Yamashita for BLP. How that is a strange um match. How did that come together, Miyu?
Uh, Literally, the promoter Mikey Blanton messaged me 2, 3 months ago, maybe, and he was like, he just he usually tells me ahead of time like what my matches are, especially now as champion. Like, and he was like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna do you." He sometimes he gives me a list, right? And it was like such and such, and then Miyu Masha. I was like, "What do you mean? I'm wrestling Miyu Masha. There's no one else that can wrestle her." Like, that's just end of the deal. So he was like, "Yeah, perfect. I think that'll be great." So it was just like it's one of the few places where I kind of can call my shots. Where like this is the person I want to wrestle if you're giving me a list of people, and I was really happy that I was able to do that because I've met and known Miyu for quite a while now.
And then after the match, wow, calling out your next potential challenger, the Maharaja, uh
Yeah,
Raj Desi. I hope I'm getting that name right.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, how do you feel about that upcoming match? And in the same year that you wrestled a Punjabi prison match as well. Yeah, how's that all coming together?
So side note, we apparently the Bollywood boys told us like before the show started that Jinder was in town still, obviously, and he wanted to like come by, but and we're like, shit, can we get him to do something at the Punjabi prison? But it was like obviously it was way too short notice to get anything cleared. So I was like, damn, well maybe next time. Um, and it was another thing where Blanton didn't even give me an option. He was just like, hey, you're gonna wrestle Raj. I was like, oh, can I say his like his WWE name? And they're like, maybe not. So I just like when I announced it, I didn't know if people would understand what I was saying, because like I I think he's awesome in the sense that he's just like he looks like a pro wrestler, right? Like when you show a picture of him to someone, they're like, "Hey, you ask him, what do you think he does?" They're probably like, "I don't know, maybe he's a bodybuilder, maybe he's a pro wrestler." I'm like, exactly, he's a pro wrestler. So like, I think that he has a lot to prove, uh, even though he's been working for like way longer than I have at a way higher level. But it's like he hasn't ever had the match that the type of match that I have, right? Because he hasn't really been given the opportunity. So one, he's going to make me look like the smallest person on planet Earth because apparently he's a giant. So I'm like not stoked on that. um, and two, I'm interested in seeing how hard he can go. Like I love testing people like inside and outside the ring. I just want to see like what you can do, especially someone that comes from that type of system.
um I just noticed that this wasn't prepared. I just noticed this on stream. You have a scar over your eye. Is that where's that
Yep.
come from? That one. Is that fresh or
Uh, no, it was GCW in Detroit where Dom said yes to doing panes of glass, and I said no. But we did them, and it wasn't even from the glass actually. It was just from like a strike exchange, and I caught a straight elbow straight to the face. I got 12 stitches, uh, and I had to wrestle Gage and Danhausen the next night. So here I
them's
am.
yeah, that's them's the breaks with pro wrestling. One thing I really wanted to talk to you about while we had you on stream here is DPW, of course. You've been spending your a lot of your time wrestling for DPW since their very first show. Like, how did that get started? Like, you were on their first show. Who reached out and how did that all come together?
Uh, James, CM Pulse, randomly messaged me on Twitter and just like gave me a pitch about first show, whatever, like we want to have you. What are your terms? And I only knew him from like YouTube reaction videos and stuff like that. So I was like, I kind of know this person isn't a super sketchball, so like, sure, why not? So we worked it out from there, and it was in like the weirdest place near Raleigh, Durham that wasn't even in there. It was in like a CrossFit gym. And I was like, it was weird getting there. But then when I got there, I saw how like much effort they put into the first show. Like they were into the ring, they already had a branding canvas, they had the colored ropes, canvas, production. Like they tried more for a first show than 90% of indies try for like their 150th show. Like they put so much time and effort into this to try to make it as good as possible that I was like, okay, this seems like a really cool thing that I would like to see through because it's very rare that you get to be at the beginning of something like new and fresh and cool like that.
So you basically got that feeling like from the first show that like, wow, these guys have their shit together, basically.
Yeah, yeah. And it was like they brought in a bunch of my friends too. So it was like I didn't feel awkward there. And everyone was just so cool to me there too. Like I never had any pushback for anything like wrestling wise or like that I needed personally wise. Like and they've just become like rather good friends to me. Like I really enjoy the times that I get to like talk to Johnny, Tony, and James. Like they took us to Japan. Like that's crazy. Like I there's often times that I'll just like text Johnny about just random things, and it's really cool that that just came from a random booking DM that I had no idea what this place was.
You sort of were touching on it earlier, like the kind of people who show up to live shows. And you've mentioned in an interview before that DPW crowds come because they're fans of the podcast. But you said that last year in 2023. Do you think that there's been a change at all? Are there more people now who are like DPW fans first, regardless of if they know Deadlock as a podcast or their other stuff online?
Yeah, I think it's definitely flipped. Like a lot of people don't realize that they have a podcast that come to the shows. Like they obviously have their fan base that's in North Carolina that like, oh, will always come. But now that they've started to like branch out from there, they know them from like the shows, right? They know like how many Joshi wrestlers they bring in. They know how many like top level talent they bring in. It's just like they're starting to be known as a wrestling company and not like the guys who did YouTube and podcasting.
When do you think that change sort of started to happen? That it became more like, oh, they're here for the wrestling. They're not here because they know the YouTube stuff, the podcast. Like when did you start feeling there was a shift there?
Selfishly, I want to say when we have the steel cage match with the Workhorsemen, I think that that's really like they never had anything like that. They never had any of that level of like brutality or like cage match or violence in there. So like people still talk about that, and I'm so proud of that match being the only cage match I've ever done in my life. So it's like I think that, and then Carolina Classic, I think it was the one where uh Jay Malachi, now Javon Evans won. Like that's when the shows really started to like up. It was like everyone was like, if you were coming into DPW, you had to show out. Like you had to be on top of your game. Like I hate when people compare things to PWG, but it's very much like a vibe like that, where it's like everyone is trying to outdo each other to be like, can you top this? Can you top like not necessarily like move or match wise, like can you top what the crowd cared about in that match from us? And I think that's such a cool, refreshing thing because so many places are just like, oh, here's your spot in the card. If you're first, don't do too much, save everything for the main event. But it's like, okay, I mean, yeah, I get it. There's fatigue, but it's also like it's a six match card. Like, fucking go.
Um, One thing I really wanted to talk about, people in chat bringing it up also, your most recent match at DPW Limit Break against Calvin Tankman. Um, it followed what is arguably sort of like the dream match draw for that card in Roderick Strong versus Fuminori Abe. Like, no offense meant, obviously, but Roddy's was a champion at the time in AEW. Fuminori Abe coming in
Yeah.
from Japan. So what is it like? Earlier we were talking about what's it like to be the dream match. Now what's it like to follow the dream match? Do you know what I mean? Like what was the feeling like before heading out there, seeing the card structure?
The entire time I was traveling to there, I was like, there's no way we're main event. Like I know that they always want to put the title main event, but I was like, there's just no way. There's just some shows where a match is bigger than the championship, right? And I was like, this is the match. Like Roddy versus Abe, like the first time ever anywhere. Like, and then when I got there, I was talking to him. I was like, oh yeah, what do you want out of the match? Like blah blah blah. And I was like, oh, when are we? They're like, oh, you're main event. I was like, okay. Like that was just added pressure on top of it that I was already putting on myself because me and Calvin have wrestled twice before that, and each match got better. So I was like, this one has to be more of like a blowout. Like I want to make it mean something where people remember things from it instead of just like, oh, they had a pretty good match, you know? So it was very much there was a lot of added pressure to it. One being a DPW show, two being main event, and three going after Roddy and Abe, who are just like they're the best in the world. You know, there's no one that can really touch what they do.
Sort of so like how do you go about constructing a match like that, knowing that it's following a dream match and you have the pressure of being in the main event for the world title?
I think that we had the advantage of there being an emotional connection and a reason why. DPW has gotten really good about that, threading uh why matches are happening from shows prior. Like the show prior to this one, Tankman got up in my face, you know, when I was just trying to help. So it was like, oh, okay, so like there's a reason why this is happening. Um, so I think that I personally went into it thinking more like, what can we do? Like, yeah, we can do all these moves, whatever, you know, we can do whatever under the sun, but it's like, what can we do to make people care about what's happening during the match? And I think that it lent to like the fact that it sucks sometimes, but I'm really good at getting my ass beat uh, and taking it and giving it back. So it's like that's how we played into it. And I really enjoyed that match. Like I was kind of on a downswing of how like I felt about my matches, and that was like the confidence boost that I needed that match.
I sort of want to touch on that actually. Like, at what point does a wrestler like feel like a dip? Like, what causes that, you think? Like, what were the signs that made you feel that way beforehand going into the tank, before the Tankman match?
Sometimes it's hard to realize that in the moment because like I'm always critical of my performances in my matches, singles and tag. And like me and Dom always have like, I guess kind of a debrief after our matches, like, how'd you feel about that? Are you okay? What do you think worked? What do you think didn't work? And it feels like we've been kind of spinning our wheels a little bit lately, um, to where we just were not necessarily going through the motions, but we were doing something that wasn't like true to us, you know? It's like I think we got too caught up in some things. Like just doing things, right? And I love moves. Like moves are sick. Like do everything under the sun if you can, you know, like if you can do it, do it. But it's like there should be like reasonings behind all these things too. So it's like you don't have to unload the chamber every single time. But I feel like we got to that point and I was just like getting bored. So I was like, I started going to matches. I hate saying this. It's just like sometimes on autopilot mode where I was like, okay, this is what we do. This is where we go. And I was just like, and I had to take a step back. Um, I was just like, this kind of isn't fun right now. It's hard to have that like coming to God moment with yourself, especially when you're like on a run. So it's like, yeah, I can't really necessarily like pinpoint the exact match or the time, but it was just like it's been feeling that way for the past like while now.
And what do you think it was about that chance to work with Calvin Tankman that sort of like sparked a shift to where you were feeling better about your work and how it came out in the end?
I think it was nice that I got a little break and got to do a singles match because it made me think differently, especially someone who I can't do everything to. Like I realistically I can't deadlift him. I can't do a lot of shit to him. He's so much bigger than I am. So it's like I really had to put on my thinking cap in my brain and it it got my juices flowing as far as like what I thought about professional wrestling again. Like I've said it so many times and I'll keep saying it, like the match with Daniel Makabe was the first match where I really like truly thought about professional wrestling as a whole, as a match goes. And it was like it was the light bulb moment that just came on. I was like, oh, these are the things that I need to think about more instead of just like these silly little things that I was thinking about before.
So you've brought it up, the match with Daniel Makabe. Obviously, we know that what's coming up in about a month or so, you versus Dan in Daniel Makabe's last ever match. And it's happening at SCI, the City Invitational. Do you remember when you first met Dan? Had you known him before the match at SUP? Like, how did you guys first meet?
No, he so all credit to Dylan Hales, 100,000% credit to Dylan Hales. He is the one that said, hey, we are booking Daniel Makabe for this show. You don't really have a say in it. It's happening already. I was like, I know nothing about him, but okay, I trust you. So we booked him. And I'm a pretty like apprehensive, like introvert person in my personal life. So I was like, okay, we have like some common interests. Like he's a punk dude, punk hardcore dude, loves coffee. So like we kind of hit it off. And then was that first show him and Warhorse? I think so. And then the next show, maybe he wrestled Cole Radrick. And I think that's when we really started to become close friends. Like we talked and talked more just about like wrestling in general. And then we had our match, and then we were supposed to have a tag match after an SCI, but he exploded his ear, so I told him he wasn't going to wrestle, and
Yes.
he he begrudgingly told me, "Yes, okay, thank you for taking care of my well-being." So I was like, "It'll be okay. We'll do this again sometime." Um, and it's very rare in I feel like in wrestling where you find a person who like you connect with on a personal level. And I feel like I do that a lot with Daniel. Like he knows a lot about my personal life. I was in his wedding. It's just like we're actual friends. And that's such a rare thing.
What was it that Dan brought to that first match you guys had in 2020 that really changed your perspective about how to approach your craft, basically?
The art of the struggle, right? Like he's so good about like not giving everything away. Uh like holds and stuff like that. Like he wants it to make he brings realism to it. Like and I feel like a lot of people have a preconceived notion of realism, like, oh, they're really hitting each other, but it's like when you're grappling, like you shouldn't be able to just like take the person, right? And he really instilled that into like he legit called these spots where it's like, don't don't let me get it or don't let me get this like right away. And it's like he always puts in like little threads throughout the entire match that'll lead to like a cool thing at the end or like a cool thing in the middle. And it's just like he thinks about every single thing to to a fault sometimes I feel like where it's just like, okay, we've we need to figure this out now. Like we're very close to going around. We have to figure this out now. Um, but that's what I love about it. Like he really puts so much time and effort into the craft that I legitimately think he's the best in the world. Like when it comes to professional wrestling, he's so smart about it. And I feel like I tell him this all the time that he just never got his due. Like he was like 6 or 8 years too late before the boom happened of like all the backyarders getting like their just due, you know? So like I hate it, but I'm glad he's getting to go out when he wants to go out.
When we last spoke about a couple of years ago, for that interview with Fanbite, you mentioned that after Dan, you became much more like dedicated to tape study as a means of preparation for upcoming matches. So beforehand, how much before Dan, like what was the difference there between preparing for a match before you wrestled Daniel Makabe and after?
So like I always watch matches of people just to like know what they were about and see if like they were terrible or anything in my eyes. Um, but then after I wrestled Dan, I watched more of like what I can do to compliment myself and vice versa, what I can do to compliment them, because that's what it's about. It's about working together and making the person look as good as you want to look, right? So that's what I took a lot from him. And I think that I'd like to think I do that. I'm just not sure. Because sometimes it's hard to really know that stuff, but it's like that's the big thing I took from Dan. Like he has like a notes app of like every single match, like what he wants to do, the ideas he has, like cool transitions and stuff like that. So like I have like an entire thing in my phone of that stuff. So it's like that's a really, really big thing I took from him.
I always sort of like I'm always fascinated by like the creative process stuff that goes behind wrestling. So when you're watching a match to prepare for an opponent, what are the things you're like specifically looking for? Like what ends up on the notes app when you're watching a match to prepare for someone?
So I more or less know what I want to do in my matches, like the things I want to do, the transitions I want to do, and I try to see if there's anything that that person does specifically that'll play into that. So I more or less have a structure when I go into my matches, right? Like I'm always the person to be like, hey, this is a structure idea I have. Let me know what you think. This, and that, and this is what I had the idea for the finish. And then we kind of like work backwards from there. And I don't, I can't remember a time where that's ever gotten pushback. Um, because sometimes it's really nice just to like not have to think about everything yourself. That's why I love being in the tag team because Dom comes up with ideas too. So I'm like, cool, I can shut off like a quarter of my brain right now so I can have some help. Um, so yeah, it's a lot of like, what can I do? Like so here's an example. I wrestled London Lightning at C4 recently. He's still super new. He's one of Stu and Uno's kids. And I was like, what do you do? He's like, these are the things I do. And it was like three things. I was like, okay. Like I asked the promoter what he wanted. He was like, just test him, have a good match, like go out there and do your thing. I was like, okay. So I was like, I called him power bombing me. I was like, why did I call this for myself? I hate being power bombed. But he does this like he does the like the Dean Malenko shoulder breaker thing, but reversed. So like I'm facing outward from him instead of tombstone style. And he was like, oh, I just leave it at that. I was like, that's cool. But what if you did that, set me down, power bomb me afterwards? And then as I was doing, I was like, did I really just call someone to power bomb me? You're an idiot. I was like sometimes people just don't know what they want to do unless there's suggestions thrown out there. So like I'm happy to throw out those suggestions because if and it got a really good reaction. And if they are happy with it, then I'm just as happy because it's a two-way street when it comes to wrestling.
When did you when and how did you find out that you were going to be Daniel Makabe's final opponent?
Uh he it was GCW in Seattle. When was that? sometime last year. I flew in earlier than Dom, so me and Dan went to get coffee and stuff like that. And we like went on a drive to like this really nice overlook, and then we went to go pick up Dom, and he asked me there. And I was like, it's kind of like a date question. Um, but it was really sweet and nice. Like I I've never been asked to be someone's last match ever. And to be asked by one of my close friends was really, really cool. Like he could have said anyone, you know, he could have tried to pull a card for anyone, but he asked me, and I take a lot of pride and honor in that.
What does it mean specifically to you uh, for this to happen, for example, at SCI, where you always seem to end up wrestling your friends? A couple years ago, you wrestled Dom at SCI in one of your many singles matches. So, yeah, tell me a bit about
Yeah.
SCI as the setting for this final farewell to Daniel Makabe.
So SEI has like a lot of good and bad memories for me. Like I did an SCI event where I injured my neck and I was out for a long time. So I was scared about that. But then like I kept showing up and they kept giving me opportunities and a lot of it was credit to Dylan. Like he's been my biggest supporter for the longest time. And like a lot of what I I do in wrestling and have in wrestling wouldn't have happened without him. And I know I tell him that quite often, and I know he's like, "Shut up, you did it yourself." But I'm like, "Yeah, I did the work, but you're the one that gave the push too." Um, and I haven't been back to this wrestling in the South for quite a while now that I live in Chicago. So it's like it's kind of a nice little homecoming, I guess you can call it. I get to see a lot of like old familiar faces. And I spent an entire Uncharted Territory season in that TW building, so I know it back and front. Um, so like it's I wouldn't have asked for. I'm glad that it wasn't in like a nice pristine venue. If that sounds weird, like I'm glad it's kind of in a dingy little place where we can have like a proper close intimate match with fans that'll actually care, as opposed to on a show that like it's like a super card or something like that. You know, like I'm really glad that we get to have that moment.
Um, how often does that like come to mind, the nature of the venue? Like hearing you speak about it now, like do you have a preference
Uh,
between like the bigger room and the smaller room? I'm curious.
Not really. I literally the only preference I have is if there's a bathroom that's meant for the people in the back. Like I absolutely hate walking out in my trunks to go to the bathroom and standing in line with everyone else. I feel so awkward. So like I could care less how the venue is as long as there's a bathroom that I can use that's in the back.
uh,
And thankfully GCW runs quite nice venues, so like you will usually have a bathroom in the back.
hell yeah. Uh, yeah, you mentioned the Uncharted Territory run, and I just want to touch on that a bit since this match will be taking place in the TWE arena. Um, that was you covered it in your The Life of Kevin Koo for IWTV. That was a weird like transition point in your life, as well as in your
Mhm.
career. Like, um, you were in the process of moving out, and you just stayed in the area basically to finish Uncharted Territory. So, like, do you have any
Yeah.
memories or like, what stands out to you about that time, that run, that weekly run?
So Jerry from IWTV asked me, I don't remember what show it was. He said uh he threw out the idea of Uncharted Territory to me and him and Dylan did, and he said that it's gonna be weekly and it's gonna be a TWE. And he said, "Can you do every single week?" I said, "Well, we just signed a lease and decided to move to Chicago, so maybe." Uh so I had a long talk and I think I was only in the house alone for like 2 weeks before the end of Uncharted, so it wasn't that bad. Um, and I missed 2 weeks because I got hurt. One of them was a tank match, actually. I broke my ankle. apparently in the second takeaway match. So I couldn't wrestle the next Monday. It really sucked. So I had to miss two of those shows. But I really enjoyed all the matches I got to have. Like I got to wrestle Anthony singles, I got to wrestle JD Drake singles, I got to wrestle BK Westbrook singles, I got to do a couple of tag matches. Like it was there was a lot of I got to go into it with different eyes. And I finally got to wrestle Kyle Matthews too, like who's a Southern legend. Like I I didn't I we were just kind of like kept passing the night. So by the time I was ready to wrestle him, he had already like kind of found his way out. So when I told Dylan for a long time, it's like, hey, I want to wrestle Kyle Matthews if he's back. He's like, okay, it'll happen. So I was so happy about that. So I try to uh I try to go into it with the mentality of like every match is new, you know? And I that was the time when Danielson actually like kind of first came back. He came to AEW. So I was like obviously watching a lot of his matches as I quite do all the time. So I was like, damn, he's had a different finish for every single one. Hmm, maybe I'll do that. And I had a lot of fun with it. Most of my finishes were different in the Uncharted run, but it's like, yeah. And then by the end, when me and Adam went like what 45 minutes or something like that, like originally originally Dylan wanted us to go 75 minutes. And I
Whoa.
was like, you are crazy. Yeah. Because he wanted to beat the IWTV 100 match with Yuta and Garcia. I was like, you're crazy. I don't know if my internal clock or my body can do that. Uh, and Adam said the exact same thing. So we went as long as we feasibly thought we could without boring the hell out of the crowd. Uh, so yeah, we went the time we went.
I did not know that it was meant to go 75. You and Adam Priest both typically wrestle much shorter, like concise matches. How does that change when the assignment is suddenly like go nuts?
We had to like because Adam doesn't do a lot, right? And like I can, but I tend to not. So it's like we had to be like, okay, I guess we're gonna spend the first like 10, 15 minutes just screwing about, like doing whatever. And then we found our period pieces and we did the like whole angle where I got brainbustered on the rampway and I didn't tell anyone besides Dylan and the security people that were supposed to be there. So I got a lot of what the fuck texts from people. Uh
Yeah.
um so yeah, that ate up a good amount of time. And then we had we we always mess with Ref Gina where we're like, oh, we're gonna bump you in this. And so like I moved out of the way and Adam missile drop kicked her. And then we had another ref come out, and then Gina came back, and it was just like we had little period pieces where like, okay, we need these time cues, but it's like it's still so hard in the moment because it's like when you get past the like 20, 30 minute mark, you're like, all right, I feel like I'm dying a slow death right now. Like I feel like I'm just waiting for things. So it's like, all right, let's get this going.
Um, recently, when you were wrestling Calvin Tankman, you wore red kick pads to the ring. And when I see red kick pads, I think of Daisuke Ikeda. And when I think of Daisuke Ikeda and red kick pads, I think about Daniel Makabe wearing red kick pads to his match with Timothy Thatcher. Is there something there? Are we like, am I just shooting at stars there? Is there something
Uh,
there?
I mean, I made those for him, specifically because he wanted that gear. But not really. I have a lot of time on my hands right now, so I started to make kick pads that match every color set of gear I have. So, um, yeah, there's not a lot to it, honestly, but we have a lot of things that we talked about during our match that I think would be really cool and fun, and a lot of people won't see coming out of a match from us. We're not going to do glass or barbed wire, like no, never. But
Definitely the first thing that comes to mind when people think Kevin Koo versus Daniel Makabe is
yeah, I
glass
know,
and barbed
right,
wire.
right.
Um, what is the wrestling that you and Dan bond over?
As funny as it sounds, is he sends me so many backyard clips of either himself or like just a random Twitter thing, you know? Like he's a quite busy person, so it's hard for him to watch a lot of like modern wrestling. So like he'll get to watch it when he's at the gym and stuff, but it's like we'll talk about each other's matches, quite honestly. Like he's so good about like hyping me up and asking me about my matches that I have coming up and just being like, have fun, be safe, da da da, like checking in. And I wish I was a lot better about that. But yeah, we just we'll send each other like funny, like weird memes. Like, hold on, let me see the last one he sent me. Let's see. He actually said he was bummed he couldn't watch this live because he has to go wrestle.
Yeah,
Well,
Dan's keeping busy.
the last one he sent me isn't a backyard clip. It's just a really insane submission counter that he sent me. You can't see this, but it's just like sometimes it's submission wrestling. So it's just like it's randomized, like something we'll see. I think there was one thing where it's like someone got lit on fire really crazy, and we're like, never, not us.
Um, do you have a favorite Daniel Makabe backyard classic?
Man, okay, so he showed us the clips from his backyard fed the day before the night before his wedding. So we stayed up until like 2 a.m. just watching backyard clips, and like there's no wonder his body's destroyed. Like he did the most he did the most crazy shit to the outside. Like he'd take power bombs just like on the floor, like so many topes to the floor, like Herc the like he showed me the clip of him doing the Rana off a roof onto the floor. Like, yeah, that's why your knees are messed up, man. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, it's crazy. So like, yeah, I loved getting to see those because he had his best man Al, who was also a former wrestler. Like he backyarded with them too. So there's one clip where um Al gets power bombed off a ladder to the corner, but his feet are still hooked in the ladder rungs.
Ew.
So the ladder comes back into his face. And I'm like,
Jeez.
how did your he was completely fine too. And I was like, how did your face not explode there, my guy? Like it was the grossest thing I've seen in my life. Mm.
That's wild. Oh my God. Backyard wrestling legend Daniel Makabe. If you find that link, you should send it my way. Um,
Oh yeah, I'll ask him for it later. I'll send it to you
yeah,
because it's
that's
just on YouTube.
crazy. Oh my God. He's in terms of his indie career though, is there a favorite Daniel Makabe match you have, not including yourself?
uh, Him and ZSJ was awesome, obviously. Like it's rare that I get to sit down and watch my friends' matches. Um, but lately I've been making a point to watch more of my friends' matches. So like him and Zach was really good. He just had a match with Amira, who's still quite new. That was very, very smart and good. I think you talked about it
Yeah, it was
on
great.
Twitter. Um, and then he sent me a private link of him and Icarus at 365, I think it's called. Blow away great. I think like man, that match was so good. And then him and Tony Deppen at the SCI.
That is a great
I
one.
think that
Yeah.
was the I think that was like one of the first times where like, damn, I really understand Daniel Makabe now. Like that was the match where Johnny Gargano stole the like front roll kick out rear naked choke thing from him. I was like, damn, like you're really good at this. Like and Tony Deppen, another one, another backyard legend who's just like so good.
Yeah, those are excellent, excellent picks. The Amira one especially is so good. I think it might be Amira's best match so far.
I agree.
Yeah,
And she's still so new. Like I think it's like
yes.
less than two years in. Like that's crazy.
Yeah. Everybody keep an eye out on Amira from the Pacific Northwest. Before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on the 2019 Michael Bay film Six Underground?
Have I seen that? Is Ryan Gosling in it?
Yes, he is.
Yeah. I saw it, it was on Netflix one time, and I saw it. I watched it just because he was in it, and it was a Michael Bay film. I remember it being insane because it's a Michael Bay film, so they just blow shit up all the time. So I'm gonna say, yeah, out of 10, a solid 8. So because I don't have to think about things, I just like things that go boom.
Yeah. That question was courtesy of Daniel Makabe, actually. So that's why I
Oh,
wanted to
good.
end on
Oh,
that.
because he was there.
When you watched it?
Yeah, it was at my ex roommate's house, and we were just like, I think it was after a show, so we just turned something on. I bet he
um,
loved it too.
do you think so? Is that the kind of movie Dan likes? Does he like a big action
You
movie?
know, yeah, probably. Who doesn't?
um, Kevin Koo, thank you so much for joining us on the stream today. Is there anything else you'd like to share with people? Anything you'd like to promote before I let you get on with your day?
Just I post all the things I do on my socials. Kevin X Ku. Um, yeah, just take care of yourselves. It's rough out here, you know? Go to therapy if you need to. Talk to people. Take care of yourselves. And I love you all.
Great advice from Kevin Koo. I also want to shout out to the chat because it's cropped out with how I'm showing it here on Twitch. Is that the the background of Kevin's Zoom? It also says on the right side. It doesn't have the title of the actual album. It says Kev in Koo.
Yeah. Oh wait. Yeah.
Yeah, over there on the side. It's you can't see it on Twitch. But maybe I'll take a screenshot for people later. Kevin Koo, thank you so
Here, hold
much.
on.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks
Send
for
me the
having me, Jake. I
picture.
really appreciate it. Yeah.
uh, Thank you for joining us, cretins here on the Twitch stream. Everybody, Scenic City Invitational this year. It's Kevin Koo versus Daniel Makabe, the final match with Daniel Makabe in professional wrestling. Kevin, I'm gonna let you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Cool. Thanks, y'all.
Take care. Bye bye.